Welcome back, guys. Jay here. So in this second video of the enemy setup, we're gonna set up a nav mesh for this game, as well as a nav mesh agent. All right. So what is a nav mesh, guys? In the world of AI in games, there is something known as navigation meshes. Basically, navigation meshes allow enemies, NPCs, and the other characters that are not controlled by the player to basically understand which areas or which surfaces in the game world that they can walk on or basically just move on, right? So, for example, walls in this game, right? These guys over here, you can't walk on those. But how would an NPC know this, right? So you got to tell them this is not a surface that you can walk on, but this is a surface you can walk on. Maybe you don't want to allow them to walk on this, so you can mark that as walkable. This is something maybe they can walk on. So there are certain areas that you got to mark as safe areas for the NPC to walk on. If you do this properly, your NPCs will be pretty intelligent in knowing where to go to. If they have a destination, it's going to path find. And that's an awesome feature that comes with Unity that you don't have to do much on. Just simply in C# in the script, you just got to give them a destination. So for your NPCs, if you tell the NPC, hey, from here, just go over here, and then go over here, and then go over here as patrol points, these are destination points, patrol points, right? So if you have the nav mesh set up, and if you have a NPC which is fully capable of navigating the world, it can basically path find. It can find the best possible and the shortest possible way to get to that destination, which is something that you don't have to code on your own from scratch. It's given to you by Unity, which is basically what's known as nav meshes or navigation meshes. So that's the first thing we're going to set up in this video, guys. And then we'll be setting up the basic, navigational code. The first thing, guys, is we got to make all of these navigation meshes, right? So what we got to first do is we got to click on those areas that the enemy can walk on or the NPCs can walk on, and make sure that these guys are static. This right here is the flow. So on the right here, on the inspector top right, there is a checkbox here that says static, all right? So if we check that on, this mesh basically is marked as static, meaning it doesn't move. It's in one place the entirety of this game, right? Which is the case. The flow doesn't move, right? So you mark it as static. Done. Now the next thing that you gotta do is, guys, go over to Window, go over to AI, and then click on Navigation. Right? When you do that, you get this new tab that'll open up on the right-hand side, most likely the default Unity workspace. So over here, you have a Bake tab here. So what does it mean when you say Bake? So these areas, these surfaces that the NPCs can walk on should be baked, right? And in Unity, in the game engine world, baking basically means marking, or sort of very similar to how you bake a cake. You would basically mark certain areas as walkable, and this is a safe area to walk on, and then you sort of hard code it in the game and just basically confirm it or make it permanent so that it doesn't move or anything like that. So baking is just a way of sort of telling the game that these are areas that the enemy can walk on, and that's it. It doesn't change, right? That's a really important point. It doesn't change. So that's what baking means. So just like how you would bake a cake, you put all the ingredients and you just bake it, and then once it's done, it's done. You can start eating it. Similar to that, just click on bake here, and then click on bake button. So when you do that, you probably would notice there's a little shade here, a little color difference here. If you zoom in here, you'd see that Unity just added sort of a layer on top of your flow, and this isn't visible in the game, don't worry. It's just in the scene view for the developers to know that these are the areas that the enemy can walk on, right? But if you zoom in real close here, you'll see that it actually even marks these areas as safe areas to walk on, which is not correct, because obviously these are obstacles and players should not be able to go there, right? But given that these have colliders, what we can then do is go to Inspector, click on any of the walls, make sure that they have a collider here, go to Add Component, and then search for Nav Mesh Obstacle, right? Nav Mesh Obstacle. If you add that component to these blocks, and you go back to your navigation, clear, and then bake again, what it's going to do is it's going to try and avoid these areas. Now, when you bake again, basically, it just marks that area as unsafe, and the player, the NPC should not be able to go to those areas. So that's an important point as well. So go ahead and do that for the rest of the walls as well. So make sure they're all marked as unsafe areas to walk to, but the rest of the area is fine. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing for this. Go to inspector, nav mesh obstacle, and then go to navigation. Also, one other thing, guys, make sure these guys are static as well, or else it wouldn't work. So I don't know if I did it here. Oh, okay. Yeah, either. So make sure these guys are marked as static. They have an obstacle. Then go to navigation, clear. When you click clear, everything that we just baked gets cleared and you can rebake it. So click on bake again. When you do that, oh yeah, it worked this time actually. You can immediately see that these areas are now marked as unsafe and the NPC is kind of now trapped to this area. This is the zone. It's very clear, right? So this is the zone that the NPC is going to basically contain itself. So it's not going to try to get to this area. It's going to try and stay here and then shoot. And yeah, that's basically how that works. And then you'd also notice that these kind of areas are also marked as walkable. So if you don't want to do that, you can basically reduce the step height and max slope and things like that, where basically you define how much of a slope the NPC can climb and how much of a height it can go to, the step height, the height of the step that they'll take. So those sort of things can be played around and obviously optimized to your liking. So feel free to play around with that, guys. It's pretty straightforward. And once done, be good to go with the navigation meshes. So make sure to do that for any other area, such as this one as well. But I'm gonna just do it for this area because it's just the enemy chapter. And then once you start building the rest of the game, feel free to do the same thing and repeat it. So what we're gonna do now is we've got the environment all set up for navigation, but we haven't told the NPC that it is now an intelligent creature who can move around. How do you do that? First thing we got to do is we got to click on the enemy, go to add component, and search for nav mesh agent. So I've already searched nav here. So when you search nav, you should get another option here called nav mesh agent. Now, what is this? Nav mesh agent is what gives all of those pre-made Unity functions for moving around to different places and chasing destinations and things like that. We bring all of that into the enemy model so that we don't have to do it from scratch. It's a Unity thing, and I love Unity for doing that. So it's very easy, and most other engines also have that, by the way. So click on Nav Mesh Agent. When you do that, you'll notice a little change here. So if you zoom into the enemy, you should see this little cylinder shape around the enemy, which is basically what carries this model all across your navigation mesh when it moves. So it looks like the enemy is actually moving to different places. But when you add the animations, that's when it sells that effect. So over here, guys, we have a couple of options that we can change. It has a speed variable, which basically changes how fast it moves. It's got angular speed, acceleration. Feel free to play around with that. And then we've also got a radius, which basically, if you change that, it basically changes the size or the thickness of this, then the height and things like that. I would just leave it as it is. Just adjust it, just match the shoulder width. That's up to you. That's about it, guys. So once that's done, it's still not going to move. The next thing we got to do is we got to set up some navigation points, like patrol points for the enemy, right? With that, we're going to end the session. And in the next video, we're going to basically bring in the script. So let's just do that to finish things off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click the hierarchy, create empty, right? So what this is basically is a patrol point. I'm going to rename it as patrol point, and I'm going to move this to a certain location, right? I'm going to move that over to this point. So it's going to get to this point, and it's also going to get to this point, right? And it's going to get to this point. I'm duplicating, by the way, Control D. I'm duplicating another one to get over here, roughly. Doesn't matter if it's the start point of the model, it'll just get there, so don't worry. So ideally, though, like you can make it, at the same level as the enemy. But okay, we've set up 4 patrol points now. We should have. Where is the 4th one? Oh, didn't I duplicate that? Okay, let me just duplicate another one, put it over here. Okay, so we got 4 patrol points. So these are the points that the enemy will traverse to, like walk to. But obviously, like it's kind of hard to see where they are when you're not selected. So what we're going to do is a little developer hack that you can bring into your game. So we're going to go to our scripts folder and create a new script called patrol, no spaces, patrol point. Okay, so once done, guys, what we're going to do now is simply open up our C# script patrol point. All right, so here's a little trick, guys. So what we're going to do is simply, I'm just going to delete these commands. At the top, we're going to say float gizmo radius. All right, so I've got this code over here. I'm just going to duplicate the same here, type it out for you. What we're going to do is a little developer hack that doesn't affect the game in any way, but it affects you as a developer to increase your productivity, right? We're going to create our own gizmo, right? You know what gizmos are. They're basically those little icons and things like that that appear in this game, like these guys. Even this is a gizmo. These are points that basically indicate things in the game. So if we create our own gizmos for the patrol points, we can immediately see where they are in the game. It's going to make it really easy for us to sort of make decisions on where they should be. All right, so gizmo, we can make this, gizmo radius, that's it, 0.25. And then we're going to code this part in here. So you can delete start and update if you want to. It doesn't really matter. If you're not using them, you can delete them. Write this code, guys. So this is private void onDraw gizmos. So onDraw gizmos is a Unity function which basically allows us to draw our own gizmo icons on the scene view, which is a pretty cool feature for developers to sort of understand where certain game objects are. So you can do this with any game objects, not just patrol points. Anything in your scene, if you attach a script that has onDraw gizmos and some sort of code like this, it's going to add some sort of icon or color or things like that. So in this case, let's walk through the code here. We're creating a gizmo of color green. Gizmos.color equals color.green, right? We set the color to green. You can try different other colors here as well. And then we say gizmos.draw sphere in the transform position, right? Which means this current patrol point position. When we say transform position, we're always referring to our position, this script's position, right? When we say our, it's the script's. And then we say gizmo radius, which is up here. So which basically means, which translates to, we're going to draw a sphere of color green to wherever the patrol point is. You'll see what happens. So hit save here. Let's go back to Unity. Now what we're going to do is we're going to attach that script to all of these patrol points. I'm going to do it to one first to make to show you what this effect is. So click on one patrol point, go to add component, search for patrol point script. Now watch what happens. Boom. I don't know if you noticed, but there you go. You notice it now. You got a little sphere here, which basically, even if you now click away, it's going to show you exactly where that patrol point is, which is pretty awesome. Now you can make a decision on exactly where those patrol points are without actually selecting them. I'm going to do it to these guys as well. I'm going to shift select all three of them, add component, patrol point. Awesome. Now I know exactly where these patrol points are, right? This is how you code really productive workspace, right? Unity. So I'm going to select this patrol point. Make sure that they're sort of aligned with the ground as well. Just doesn't really matter. The enemy is not going to try and go beneath the ground, but it kind of helps that, you know, they're kind of in the ground and not floating. Don't worry, like even if it's over here, the enemy is not going to fly up there, or it doesn't really matter. But it's just a thing that I do to make sure that they're sort of grounded. I know it's not an elevated position. There we go. Awesome. Now I've got 4 patrol points that the enemy can basically walk to. That being said, guys, that's it for this video. We're going to keep it short, and we're going to try and set up everything first before we get into the coding. The next video, you're going to start coding the basic patrol state for this enemy, and then we're going to go on from there. Awesome. See you guys in the next one.